if you remember Major League 2, not to the point where you're willing to call your team a racially insensitive name like in Cyril Marble's Tanaka, but if you remember the movie enough to recall a scene between Jack Parkman and Rick Vaughn. Rick Vaughn, who's obviously played by Charlie Sheen, and Jack Parkman, who is played by an actor named David Keith. I had to look that one up. So this particular exchange takes place during practice. David Keith's character is, in his own mind, he's a big fish in a small pond. He's this big hot shot, and he's too good to play on the Cleveland Indians. Of course, he then later gets traded. Charlie Sheen is a superstar pitcher who has pitches that he has named. Now, in this scene, Charlie Sheen, getting a full sense of Parkman's contempt, he decides to challenge him. So he says, if you can hit my main pitch, which was called the Eliminator, if you can hit the Eliminator over the wall, you get to rename it. So what happens next is Parkman, of course, hits the ball over the fence. And while rounding the bases, he playfully suggests, how about the masturbator? We'll get back to that, okay? This is your week 6 recap. And what we're going to do is a bit different this week because I'm going to get to my announcement in just a little bit. So I'm going to sort of reverse engineer this installment, and I'm going to give you guys the scores first. Obviously, I came up short versus Turtle Power, 100-86. Ed took care of Paul by a final score of 112-81. Hell's Kitchen, Jay, scores a whopping 52 points to Andy's 101. Ewok Rape doesn't fall too far behind with a final score of 56-83, coming up short up against Hensel. And Joe pulls off the upset against Pedro, 84-81. Now, Pedro did something that I always frown upon, and he decided to sit his number one quarterback. Except, as I told you guys, this is all about value and, that the economics of a player, all that bullshit that I told you guys a couple weeks ago, right? So it doesn't really apply in this sort of situation for Pedro because I looked at the papers and it turns out that Pedro drafted Phillip Rivers in the 11th round. When you draft a quarterback that late, it's obvious that Pedro didn't put that much weight on Phillip Rivers. And I guess since he had a matchup against the Denver Broncos, he wasn't trying to chance that. Though, of course, I will always argue that if I pick somebody number one, I don't care if he's going against the steel fucking curtain. I don't care if he's going against the 2000 Ravens defense. He's going out in that goddamn field. But as I said, the 11th round, so I don't find any fucking problem. I mean, not that Pedro gives a shit, but I don't find a problem with him benching Phillip Rivers, though Phillip Rivers would have given Pedro the difference to beat Joe. Joe's teams, it's a little different right now. It's not the team it was from 2 weeks ago. Obviously, he's got Brady going. And, he got very good production from Terrence West and Jonathan Stewart. Joe's team still isn't shit, but it makes a hell of a big difference if just a week ago, as the commish brought to my attention that just last week, before this week, Joe's highest point total was 71. Obviously, you see the difference of a Tom Brady who can add 14 to 15 points to your point total when, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think are the averages of fantasy football losses? I mean, fantasy football losses may vary from, maybe from 13 to 20 points. So that's obviously a big difference. And Joe's team's a little different. He's still got the worst team in the league, in my opinion. But it's a bit different now than it was 2 weeks ago, obviously. The highest point total of the week was scored by Ed with a whopping 112. And Ed so arrogantly asked the question in the chat this week, and he goes, since he's 6-0, yo, what? This is Ed's voice. Yo, what was the record for most consecutive wins? Like every fucking season. Listen, last season I closed out the regular season with 5 wins in a row. Every season you've got your pockets of 5 or 6 wins, maybe even 7. I don't know. I didn't check for all that, but yeah. So he's asking, and as I said. And I'll explain later on the other half of this statistic, which I've explained before, but I will explain once more because you guys are fucking stupid. In 2010, Orlando, and at this point, I have provided a screenshot of this. Orlando won 10 games in a row, and he lost 2 games that season. He lost 1 game to me earlier. And then he lost in the championship. That was really a cough, by the way. I wasn't being a dick. Or maybe I was. So 10 games in a row is the record, Ed. It's in a row. And we face each other, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks from now. So I don't think you're getting there, buddy. So, okay. So the lowest point total of the week was Jay with 52 points and Eric with 56. Hensel is running under the radar here. And, of course, Hensel's running under the radar to himself because he probably doesn't even fucking know he's 500 and he's just, like, right in the heat of this whole shit, which makes it even worse. I said it before, and I said Hensel is that girl that we know in every Super Bowl party that we make the boxes for, right? Everybody puts in $1 or, $2 into every box. And at the end of every quarter, she finds herself in the kitchen whining about her boyfriend, and she wins at the end of every quarter. Oh my God, I won. I didn't know I would win. Oh my God, how much did I win? And she fucking walks off with like fucking $75 that night. That's Hensel. I mean, of course, he's not winning any fucking championships, but this season, that's pretty much what's happening. So, I'd like to move on to another item. And I would like to discuss 2 numbers to you, okay? I'd like to discuss 2 numbers to you. And the first number is 169. That number is the difference of point totals between Joe and I. Joe has scored 405 points, and I have scored 574 points. The second number that I want to present to you is 101. 101 is the difference of points between Jay and I. Jay has 473, and again, I have 574. Now, I say that to say this. It's pretty obvious, and I've told you guys this, over the last few weeks. It's pretty obvious that my team is amongst the highest scoring teams in the league. In fact, right now, I am 3rd in points, just behind Ed with 621 and Pedro with 618. Then 3rd is me. Now, the reason why I compare myself to these 2 gentlemen is because we're all 1 and 5. Except the only difference between them and I is the fact that my team has, I don't even want to say given up, but obviously how many points scored against is 613. Against Joe, it's 555. And against Jay, it's 532. So that lets you know that Jay's team could quite possibly be worse than Joe's team. I don't care if he scored. The only reason why he scored 60 something more points than Joe is because Joe didn't have Brady. Okay? You could make an argument and say that Jay is probably the worst team in the league right now. My team is not my record. Oh no. My team is not my record. And in order to drive this home, I'm going to propose something to you guys, okay? Are you guys ready? Okay. I am so confident in my team. I'm so confident in my team's ability to score. Fantasy is serendipitous. You can score, 575 points and be the third highest scoring team, but fucking give up 613 and you're 1-5. But I'm so confident in my team and where my team is going forward that I will propose the following. If I do not make the playoffs, I am no longer Team Bundy. Oh, yes. I can hear the collective cries. I can hear the collective laughing. And most of all, I can hear the collective cheers. But, you say, well, that's not a big deal. Who gives a shit, right? That's your team name. Who cares? But wait, there's more. Not only will I no longer be Team Bundy, but what I also will do is burn this very shirt that you see right here on the recap cover. This is a shirt that I've had for the past, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years. And if you know anything about Married with Children, you know that Polk High was the school that Al Bundy played for. And to tie this back into the 10 wins, if you guys would remember, you probably don't. Paul wasn't here, so he doesn't know this. So when we first started this fantasy league, the very first season that Pedro ended up winning was the season that I ended up with the very best record. I ended up with the best record, and I believe I was ousted in the very first round, but not before I managed to win 10 games in a row. So the 10 games in a row became a bragging right for me. I won 10 games in a row. I won 10 games in a row until everybody reassured me that it didn't mean anything because I didn't win the championship. So the reason that what's at the very genesis of this Team Bundy name is the fact that Al Bundy hung his hat for years about scoring 4 touchdowns. Obviously, it's meaningless. He lives a miserable life with a woman he doesn't want to be with, a job that he hates, and kids that he regrets having. So people then reminded him that those 4 touchdowns don't mean a goddamn thing. So I then called my team Team Bundy because 10 wins didn't mean anything, just like 4 touchdowns in one game didn't mean anything either. So that answers your question, Ed, of the 10 wins and Orlando later tied. And that is the reason why I call my team Bundy. But I'll take it another step further, kiddies. Because if nothing else, I make this interesting for you. I add color to this fantasy fucking league. So I'll do this. Because I know that you guys listen every week. And you laugh at the fact that I'm 1-5. Okay, all right. He's 1-5. Yeah, he talks about the papers, all this shit, and he's 1-5. He fucking say, all right, that's fine. That's fine. I am so aware of your contempt for me, as Rick Vaughn was aware of the contempt that Jack Parkman had for him, when in reality, no, I fucking have contempt for all you guys, that I will allow the champion of this season to rename my team. I'll give you a little silence after that. Oh, did I just make shit more interesting? I think I did. Now, come on, guys, use your imagination. That's not something that you guys do very often, but just listen. You guys could call me anything. You guys could call me anything. You can go anywhere. Fucking Orlando wins. Be like Orlando's bitch. Go ahead, call me that. Go ahead. Or you could go the creative route and do a little interesting name flip or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can pick my name and you can pick my logo that I will wear in shame until I win a championship. Then I am able to then change it and no longer live in shame. Okay? If that's a deal, we can shake on it. Deal. Okay? So let me go back. If I do not make the playoffs, if I do not make it to the playoffs, I am no longer Team Bundy. And whoever wins the championship this season gets to rename my team and logo. Nothing else needs to be said. That's it. Nothing else needs to be said. So what we're going to fucking do is we're going to move on to next week's games. Bundy faces playoffs next week, the 1-5 matchup, and you guys can all laugh at me and Joe. Go ahead. Oh, it's hilarious. I have 2 championships, okay? Most of you don't have any. Go fuck yourselves. The next matchup is Paul versus Jason. Jason, who of course is 1-5 as well, going up against Paul, who is 4-2. And Suro Marbles Tanaka up against Eric Ewok Rape, both 3-3. Another 3-3 matchup between Hensel and Orlando. And the most interesting game of the week is Pedro versus Ed. Pedro is at a huge disadvantage. Huge, as Donald Trump would say. Pedro is at a huge disadvantage because Pedro doesn't have his ego. Ellie, he's not playing. He's not there. Also, Pedro does not have Greg Olson because the Panthers are also on a bye. So I would probably say it's very likely that Ed could go 7-0 because, you know, he just so happens to, to get Pedro at just the right time. This was your week 6 recap. You guys heard what the fuck I said. You heard what the fuck I just did. And as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their calf muscles. And may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves.